Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 15th, 2022 Board of Selectmen's meeting, and beware the Ides of March. May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Now, all 5 selectmen present this evening, as well as town council and the town administrator.
Excellent. Mr. Manise, would you do the honors this evening? Please.
I will.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag
flag
of
of the
the
United
States of
States,
America,
to
to
the
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. We'll start announcements with Mr. Manise. How are you this evening?
I'm very good, thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Vikings boys basketball team for a great season and a good run into the playoffs. And I guess they lost to the #1 team this past week in the round of 8. So just a shout out, great job. And it sounds like they're going to be coming back strong next year. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, any announcements, sir?
Yeah, I believe, I think I'm right. I believe the Tigers cheerleaders team that went to Florida, I think they won their division. If that's the case, we probably should come up with some kind of a presentation for them as well. And I'd like to do something a little different. Normally we give like a plaque or something to the team as a whole. It'd be nice to go see if we can find some kind of a mentor that would, with a date or something that they could basically have for themselves, each one of them, for the team and for the coaches. Would be nice to do. Just a suggestion. South Coast Hospital, today there was, I think, 2 or 3 COVID patients between all 3 hospitals. And that's great news. That's really almost completely gone now. They've opened up the hospital for people to come and visit as well. Still have to wear a mask, of course, but things are definitely coming around. A sad note, of course, the end of last week, a long-time person used to watch the selectmen's meetings in person for years. Jerry Barrows passed away, and I'd asked that we give a moment of silence for Jerry. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Titlebaum?
Yeah, Jerry was a fixture, and you know, he'd sit in that corner seat right up front. He had his own row, even nobody else would.
Right.
He eventually wound up with his own special seat, and you know, he would catch us sometimes on procedural mistakes, and he'd bark right out at us and let us know where we'd screwed up. It was kind of funny having a cop kind of watching us, but he was a friendly cop, and you know, he always had a good sense of humor about him, and was very passionate about the town. So Jerry will be missed. Yeah, I was going to announce the Tigers thing. Congratulations to them. They did win their division. I don't think I have anything else for announcements.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Tropiano?
Nothing for announcements.
Nothing for announcements for me either then. Okay, let's go to town residents' comments.
Did we do Jim?
Oh, I thought I did Jim first.
I started.
Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Thank you.
Geez, I missed that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's all right.
Yeah, he congratulated the boys basketball team.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
see anybody with their hand raised, so we will move on to board's comments. Mr. Manise?
Nothing.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum?
Yeah, this goes to a case that the planning board granted special permits on, I want to say about a year ago, and that was appealed. And this related to the one of the 80 Makepeace properties, and the permit was to allow a solar installation. And the land court, which is where the case went, wound up dismissing the case. All I've seen online is the actual notice of the dismissal. I haven't seen the actual reasoning, but I just wanted to say these are controversial times and controversial issues. But you know, our planning board does follow the law, and I think they do the best they can at that. And just because they may issue an adverse decision, or some people may think it's an adverse decision, doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't make them immoral. They're simply following the law. And in this instance, the court agreed with them that they were following the law. So I hope that people realize that it's okay to be passionate about things, but sometimes you get a result, it doesn't go in your favor, and you just have to accept that that's the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin?
Oh, let's see, here we go. I'm a little slow today. Just as a comment, I had a chance to use the Toby ER on Friday. I have to say that the service I got was excellent. I was able to joke back and forth with them as they were taking care of me. And the new facility is very close to being ready. And I'm looking forward to the increase. I also like to thank Kim Shaver-Hood in the school department for helping out Mr. Giancarlo, who had an issue with the pump station for sewer that his building across the street was hooked up to that for years. And with the new school, that of course was no longer continued. They found a way to take care of the issue. And also for Mr. Buckland, just give him a heads up that the 2 letters he asked for support went out last week as well. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Tropiano?
Okay, so, even if this is a good idea or not, but I just want to say that, the world is in like turmoil right now. Thank God, hopefully we're coming out of COVID and people's emotions and crazy will kind of calm down a little bit. You got to feel so bad for those people fighting over in the Ukraine. They are really, standing up for their country. And I hope that if anything like that ever happened here, that we'd do the same. But, you got to feel bad for those people. You got to feel bad for what's going on over there. And I think the whole craziness that's going on in the world in general has everything to do with what happened for 2 years plus with this COVID. People were emotionally drained and hurt and sort of out of sorts in general. I mean, let's face it. And I just hope that now that the numbers are going way down and maybe this thing's going to kind of get behind us, that, people will start to pay more attention to what they say, what they think. And maybe we can come out from underneath this darkness that we've been in, because we've been in a dark place. And I think it's time to get out of it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I have no comments. We have no appointments, reappointments, or interviews. We do have only one hearing this evening. We will not be hearing from Rare Hospitality International, but we have to wait for 7:15. So I would suggest that we go to item 9B, which would be Jamie Rebin Buckminster, please. Would you let her into the meeting? She will be discussing the 18, 19, and 20 CDBG grants, and she did send us some information later this afternoon, which you all have, I believe. Good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Would you introduce yourself? And
Yes. Jamie Rebin Buckminster, Manager of Community Development Programs from Community Opportunities Group.
excellent. And you are here to bring us up to date on the 18, 19, and 20 CDBG grants.
Correct. I figured I'd throw the budgets up there. I've got them a little bigger so that everybody can see them. And I figured I'd just open it up. I know you guys got the memo late this afternoon. I figured I'd give you my spiel and let you ask any questions, however you want to do this.
That would be great. Thank you.
Great. So this is the FY 2018 CDBG program. We finished it up about a year ago this spring, I want to say. It's currently in closure with DHCD, which can unfortunately take sometimes a couple of several months to a year or so for them to be finished with it. But Everything was successfully spent. We had a very successful public social services that year, and also the first part of the Wareham Housing Authority roof project was done. You'll see the second part of that project in the FY19. Is there anything anybody would like me to expound upon here?
Why don't you do the whole thing and then we'll come back to,
Okay, that's fine.
if that's okay.
Yep, no, that's totally fine. Let's see. So we're into the FY19 grant. We did the housing rehab program, the Wareham Housing Authority roof project. I'll come back to the Highland Avenue sidewalk improvements, public social services, and then we obviously our program delivery and general admin costs. The housing rehabilitation program was put on into this grant after the Housing Authority roof project came in very under budget. It was always a plan to split the roof project between the 2 grant years. We did not realize, and this is probably the last time it'll happen, that it would come in so far under our budget that we had set based on the quotes that we'd gotten in writing the grant. So we had some money left over. 100,000 of it went to the housing rehabilitation program, and due to increased costs, we are almost completely done with that money. We're just finishing up final invoices and seeing what we can split between the FY19 grant and the FY20 grant. So there's that. The roof project there, it shows you the entire cost that was allocated to FY19. The bulk of the cost was back there in FY18, as you can see. The Onset Highland Avenue sidewalk improvements might sound familiar. That's because we originally budgeted for that project in the FY21 grant, which I talked about last week. That's the grant that we just received word that we would be fully funded. This was tricky. We had the 147,000 some odd dollars left over from the roof project. We sort of went back and forth a little bit with, the administration, Mr. Sullivan's office, amongst ourselves, trying to figure out what the best, or I guess most efficient way to use this money would be. When we got the quote for the Highland Avenue improvements, it kind of surprised us. It was a lot higher than we expected, even adding in considering that everything is more expensive now and that there are supply chains issues and all of that due to the pandemic and everything else going on. So I was a little concerned that we had such a high budget, but we built it into the FY21 grant, and there's program income and other things, which I can explain if you have any questions, that could supplement it. But talking with everybody and conferring with our partners over at DHCD, it became clear that it would be a prudent use to use the 140,000 remaining in the budget for the roof project on what we call soft costs or startup costs for the Highland Avenue sidewalk improvements. I know that sounds weird because we're talking about a 2019 grant that's been issued, years ago now. And this brand new sidewalk projects that's going to happen as soon as we get start getting this new grant set up. So it's just, if we could do engineering and soft costs design things through the FY19 grant and not through the FY21 grant, that would allow us to use the FY21 grant money on construction. I don't know at this point how much the design fees, the engineering costs, that sort of thing are going to be. But when I was talking with DHCD, I suggested that, we can use this $147,000, knowing that we want to make sure we can complete the FY19 grant, in a reasonable time. And if it goes into the construction budget, great. If not, at least we were able to use this money for the soft costs. So at any rate, we're gonna earmark those funds for the Highland Avenue sidewalk improvements. If we end up with money left over in the FY21 grant, because God knows, maybe everything rights itself and construction costs come back down again, great, then we can decide what to do with any leftover funding in the FY21 grant. So we're sort of, starting this up now and seeing how things progress as we go on. And DHCD was fine with that, and that'll help us get this project started. Let's see. We do have to have a public hearing on this change. It's a requirement of Cdbg from both HUD and DHCD. So if you do see that pop up in the coming weeks, that's why. I'm not sure when we'll have it, but you're more than welcome to attend, and I'll probably give a little background as to what's gone on here and what we're doing in the future too, just because it's nice when you have a public hearing to talk to everybody about everything. I broke out the public social services separately here just so you could see. Everybody except for GATRA is done, but as of this week, I believe GATRA is about 85% done, which they were very, very set back by the pandemic, as I know you know, and ridership just dropped off and it hasn't really come back. So they're spending that money a little bit slower than we initially expected. But since we had that leftover funding that we have to spend anyway from the roof project, it's not a big deal. We'll have them finish that grant out and then they can start on their FY20 grant. The FY20 grant, which is started up about, gosh, I want to say almost a year ago, but time sort of blends into everything lately. It has the Housing Rehabilitation Program, which we are now starting on after we're finishing the FY19. We'll then start on these funds. We like to have a nice clean sort of switch in the grant funds. So that's $158,000. The Bayview Park sidewalks replacements, which was the project I spoke of last week. This is an ADA accessibility project with some, aesthetic properties that are sort of an offshoot of that. So we have that funded in there. Public social services, again, at $165,000, that's 20% of your grant. That's the most you can fund. And Wareham has been very good to its organizations now and in many recent years and fully expending all of that toward organizations. So we have the Christopher Donovan Day School. They haven't started on their grant yet. They're working on it. I'm working with them on some sort of back and forth issues that we have. Damien's Place, $28,000. We initially funded them for $23,000. We added an initial $5,000 because we had it earmarked for youth services, which was the Boys and Girls Club. Damien's Place needed a little extra bump. They got a little extra bump. They fully expended their funding. GATRA Transportation, $37,000. The only reason they haven't started on that is because they're finishing up their FY19 funds. Then we'll move them on over. Turning Point, honestly, I got their first invoices last week and they're almost completely funded. So that we know that they are, the money's going to where they said it would go and they're using it even faster than we expected. Just a little note on the Housing Rehabilitation Program that I forgot to mention. There's about $7,000 in what they call program income, which is the money that the town receives when a housing rehab, in this case, it's the money the town receives when any Cdbg program brings in money. It's called program income. In Wareham's case, it's generally always housing rehab. If we've put a lien on somebody's property and they sell the house or pass away before that lien is fully forgiven, they have to pay some or all of it back depending on how long they have had the lien. So that comes back to us as program income. DHCD says we need to spend it. And then we find in our following grant years, we figure out where to spend that program income. So housing rehab is always a great program. There's always a need. So we added $7,000 in program income for that. I apologize, public social services, I'm back to. A total of 40,000 was originally awarded to the Boys and Girls Club, or that youth services right up here, before it shut down. Like I said, because Damien's Place had continued need throughout the pandemic, and we knew that they could spend the money, an additional $5,000 was allocated to the pantry, which leaves us with $35,000 in unallocated public social services funding. It was always the town's, I think, plan to try to allocate this to another public service organization that is just cleaner and faster to get the money spent. And we know that we have many organizations who can use that money. And because it was originally earmarked for youth services, I know Mr. Sullivan and I both agreed that it would be great if we could give the funding to another youth services organization. There wasn't immediately one that, came to mind until I think it was several weeks ago. I was fortunate to wander into Derek's office looking for a signature, and a representative from Community Youth Empowerment was in there. And I said, great, I've been wanting to talk to these people. So long story short, they put me in touch with Joanne Gamble of Community Youth Empowerment, and we sat down and chatted a couple of weeks ago. And it sounds like he has some CDBG eligible programs that we could fund. I know that I don't want to speak for him or out of turn, but I know that he was going back to his board to discuss a potential opportunity here. And then if the board agrees that this is something that could be pursued, we'll work with that organization to get that funding allocated to them. It'll take a little bit of a proposal to DHCD just to let them know what's going on and a budget and all of that. But if we could get that money back into the youth, that would be wonderful. So thank you, Derek, because you made the introduction. It was just serendipitous, and it was wonderful to be able to meet with them. And let's see, I believe that's all of the pertinent things I wanted to talk about. I really wanted to open it up to you to see if you had any questions, and I'm happy to answer anything further.
Excellent. Mr. Tropiano, do you have any questions?
I have one. Okay. I noticed that in the 19 budget, there was money GATRA didn't take. And I also see in the 20 budget that they haven't taken any of the money. And of course, we're in 22. And you know why that is? Why they haven't taken any money?
Yes, the FY19 grant started up just in time, or several months before. I'd have to double check, before the pandemic started. So even though you see these fiscal years, and it's like, geez, that was so long ago, but in reality, that's the year that we've written the grant, and the grant was due. And then it takes several months for DHCD to approve the grants, and then even more time for them to deal with HUD, get their contracts from HUD, get their contracts back out to us. So there's a delay in startup. So unfortunately, GATRA really did suffer from the pandemic. They're planning to spend that money, and they will. And since we'll be working on the Highland Avenue Sidewalk projects and finishing that up, they have time to finish that grant. And I know that they will. There's a small delay in invoicing, but that should be done with invoices they'll submit to me in the next coming weeks. And then they'll start right on their FY 2020 allocation. So I don't know, if there's going to be an issue with them spending that full $37,000 in FY 20, but we've got other work to do. So we're going to give them the opportunity to spend it. And if we need to reallocate it at some point, we can always do that. But I know it's a welcomed resource for them still. So
I remember that we at one point we used to give the library some money, and we couldn't because we just, some of these people needed more money, and we didn't give the library money. And if there's going to be some money left over, I'd like to see that transferred there. And secondly, I believe, I think in order to make these changes, you need our approval, because I think our chair has to sign those documents, the changes in the documents.
No, the town at a town level can change budget allocations as it needs between budget lines of a certain activity, like public social services is a great example of that. If we have an organization that isn't able to spend, but another one is, all we have to do is notify DHCD, and I also typically notify Mr. Sullivan's office that we're going to make this change. If there's any issue, we'll talk about it, but the Board of Selectmen does not have to sign off on that. Also, just as an aside, none of this could be allocated to program delivery or general administration. Those are capped. But any movement, any budget amendment from one line to another, say if I wanted to take $50,000 from the rehabilitation program and put it into the sidewalk replacement, I'd have to ask DHCD and also confirm with the town. I'm not sure if Mr. Sullivan is here. All towns do this differently, depending on their Board of Selectmen and their administration.
Yeah, I think Jay, long story short, this is, the board will, usually we bring these up to you just to get some advice and what your thoughts are on these. And that's what the proposals are. If you have some other ideas, we'd be glad to hear it.
No, I
just-
just feel that
sorry.
we're in the right process, that's all. I know that you're allowed to move 10% between budget lines, but this is considerably more. And I think it's a great idea to move that money to the sidewalk project if it's available. I don't have a problem with some of these moves, but I think when we make these changes, I can remember signing these grants changes many times over the years, and I think we have to sign these moves. But if you say no, then it doesn't become a problem, then it's fine with me.
I'm trying to think of what you may have signed off on. I know you have to sign the cover sheet as the chief elected official for the grants.
We go through, we do.
I'm not
the
familiar
initial-
with the 10% rule. I'm not sure.
Jamie, that's town budgets.
Oh, okay.
That's for town budgets.
Okay.
Used to be in the Municipal Modernization Act, changed that. Patrick, I think Selectman Tropiano, I think you're thinking about when we do the grant implementation, we bring everything forward on the initial grant to the Board of Selectmen. You guys vote on that and do those activities. These are some of the move around, and this is why we brought it. This is why it has been brought back to you. But as to your signing, at this point, doesn't do what you want, I guess.
No, that's. By the way, you can call me Patrick. You don't have to call me Selectman Tropiano or any of that thing. I don't. It doesn't. Patrick's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a side note, when it comes to public social services, we do typically do an RFP process. That's, a very fair process that the town likes to conduct. And, I would love to have a member of the Board of Selectmen, if you're willing, for the next round, be on the committee that scores the applications. Typically, we've done it in the office. I would love to have, a representative from the board to help out on that. But your concerns are heard, and I appreciate them.
Thank you. Mr. Manise?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of follow up on Selectman Tropiano. I understand about smaller amounts being moved, but it'd be nice to be informed beforehand when you're considering moving large amounts of money to support projects, just so we're aware. And if I don't know if I had not asked to be updated, if we'd know at this point in time tonight. So in an RFP, if you have $40,000 out there, would be nice to allow other youth groups a competitive process. I don't know how much CYE needs, but $40,000 is quite a bit of money, at least in my estimation. I don't know about your own. And I know we had discussed providing it to other social youth service groups. So that's a good thing. Housing rehab, it looks like you're spending the money nicely. You could always use more. And what do we get, a 15-year deed restriction on the property? Does it utilize that?
Not a deed restriction. It's a 15-year lien. It's forgiven 1/15 per year until you get to 15 years. As long as you stay in the house for 15 years, or it stays in the family if the homeowner passes away, that lien stays in effect.
Is that SHI eligible though? Because they used to be SHI eligible, subsidized housing inventory eligible. So I hope we're following the same process.
I don't believe they are. I'd have to check with my colleagues on that, but I know that in the past, Wareham has not.
We had quite a few on there, but they're dropping off.
It may not have been the housing rehabilitation program through CDBG.
Well, okay, thank you. And last time you asked for a selectman to score things, I volunteered, but no one ever took me up on it.
That's because we haven't had that process
No, that was
happen yet.
last year. Last year
Correct.
you mentioned it, and I volunteered. And, okay, that's about all I have to say. And thank you very much for putting this together at my request. And I'll probably stop in and see you. You said you'll be in tomorrow?
I will. I might not be in until later morning. I have a meeting that just popped up, but I'll be in there.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And just as an aside, when it comes to the, I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. It's been a long day.
I mean, the social services, are we still limited to five units, if you will, in an individual grant year?
Correct. It's up to 5 and up to $165,000 or 25% of the grant. You will see that back.
Yeah, so you could not split that 35,000 between 4 entities or anything like that.
Correct. That we could not do that. You'll see back here in FY18, we had a very small amount of program income that we were able to give to reading partners to supplement their FY17 grant. That's one of the programs at the library. I don't think we'll be able to do that again. That was a special situation, but otherwise, correct, Mr. Sullivan. It's up to 5 and up to $165,000 or 20% of the grant. And just because of we were concerned about timely expenditure, we did, look out for other organizations and try to see if there was one that we could allocate this funding. But your concerns are heard, and I certainly understand your point.
Yeah, and I just want to confirm, Jamie, these things tonight, the Onset, Highland Ave, and the potential CYE, that has not been done yet. That's being asked by the Board of Selectmen. Is that my
correct?
understanding?
That's not been done yet. And honestly, the Bayview Park sidewalks, sorry, not Bayview Park, I'm sorry, back here, Highland Avenue sidewalk improvements. In talking with the administration and with our partners at DHCD, we thought that would be a prudent use of that money. I haven't scheduled the public hearing yet because I wanted to talk to you guys about it, and I had planned on talking to you guys about this last week, but I was concerned about the open meeting law violation. So I promise you would have known. I don't like to do anything in the dark.
And just one of the things is, if we do not expend this in time quickly, we lose it or potentially get our next grant reduced, which is why we were trying to push it to a project that would move quickly.
Correct. We have to have a certain percentage of prior grants spent when it comes to the next application. We can ask for a timely expenditure waiver. We did ask for one this past year when we wrote the application in September because of the pandemic holding everything up. DHCD is good about giving many entitlement communities timely expenditure waivers, but it's something you don't want to do if you don't have to. They like to see that the money's being spent quickly. They don't want to see people sitting on it. It looks bad for them.
Jamie, could you just, we've got 147 proposed if the selectmen agreed to it for the sidewalks, then the 279, so almost 300 for Bayview Park. That's about 450,000. We have additionally outside of this, we have for the pier about 450,000 in engineering to repair that, another 90,000 going into Heinz Field and a couple other projects. So I'm looking at over $1 million dedicated to Onset specifically.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
at least from my end, I can say yes.
That's between town expenditures and CBDG funding,
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
right? And isn't there some other additional funding towards Highland Ave for this year's or?
You're correct for the
And that would bring it
FY21
up.
grant.
And how much is that?
In the FY21 grant for Highland Avenue, we've allocated 415,000. That was, like I said, we got a very high quote for that. I'm hoping that we can
Oh,
get it for cheaper, but realistically,
what did we put in for when we broke up the?
we put in for what we needed, what the quote was, but it was right at the top of the
415.
quote. So it made us a little nervous considering fluctuating costs.
And how-
Selectman Reese, thank you for catching that. I forgot about that aspect.
And what about the Bayview Park quote? How's that coming in? Or have we gotten there yet?
So we haven't gotten there yet. We're keeping an
Okay,
eye on it.
We're good, we're good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're keeping an eye on it because trust me, I am just as nervous as you are. This grant was written back in March of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. So, you know, there's a lot of hoping going on, and we may need to shift some stuff around in current grants, future grants, but we'll figure it out, and we will have program income also coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, just for a heads up, gas was $2.12 a gallon at that time. So,
Okay, I would remind you all, I've let you go a little bit off the way that we should be doing this, so I would ask that you go through the chair. This is fine. Getting the information out there is very, very important. And I'd like to move on to Mr. Titlebaum now.
Yeah, just to back up to Jim's point about whether the properties in the housing rehab go on the subsidized housing index. We ran into a problem years ago when DHCD, and I know this involved the old building downtown that Ryan Correa turned into apartments. Right in midstream, they changed the term of years that something had to be deed restricted for and jacked it up. And we had to fight with DHC to get those involved. And I may be conflating two things here, but I think that when they did that, they also got rid of these 15-year affordable things on the subsidized housing index. I think we went back and forth with DHCD on that under the prior CETA director and just couldn't get anywhere with it. So I don't believe those haven't been added since that time. I do know that. With regard to the status of the budgets, thanks for the update. I don't see anything that's all that unusual here, given that there's a pandemic going on and some of the monies couldn't be expended. So, you know, also issues with, for example, a social service agency no longer being in existence and maybe not having expended all the money. You know, just have to roll with the punches here. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin?
I'm sorry, just to Mr. Titlebaum's point,
Oh,
I will tell you that the community development arm of DHCD is separate from the affordable housing arm of DHCD, so it can get a little tricky between the two departments. And also the housing rehab funds are treated a little bit differently than the project that we helped fund down on Main Street. It can get tricky. I'm not trying to avoid questions or anything, but it's an interesting program. And like I said, I'm here every Wednesday. If you want to stop by, I don't mind if you want to talk things out.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin?
No, everything's been covered very thoroughly by the other selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with you. Mr. Sullivan, do you have any further comments that you'd like to add?
No, I
questions?
believe I chirped in enough, so.
Thank you.
I do appreciate COG Inc. and specifically Jamie for this is not easy bureaucratic stuff to get through. It makes your head spin. So thank you. And I appreciate it. And I won't lie though, I do miss Peter's answers of yes and no when you asked him a question. So
I try to invoke the Peter pause every now and then, which is where you say, yes,
Okay.
but.
I want to thank you for the presentation this evening. We may ask you to come back in at a future time when the next set of information comes out. I think it's important for the townspeople to be aware of how this money is being spent and to understand why we get so much money. Why do we get so much money?
Because
Jamie?
Wareham has a high, unfortunately, a high need. But fortunately, because we do have a high need, we're able to get this money allocated each year as a mini entitlement community. We don't have to compete competitively for the funds. We don't know how long that will last. It's something DHCD reviews periodically, but at least for now, we're getting the money as long as we apply for it every year, which I will tell you makes Wareham a very fun town to work in and a town that you can get things done a lot faster than, say, some of my other municipalities who are competitive. And I do live in town, so I don't mind coming to selectmen's meetings. It's not difficult for me.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. If none of you have any further questions, I will ask Ms. Buckminster to leave the meeting and we will go back to our 7:15 hearing. Mr. Tropiano?
Yep, I move that we open the public hearing on an application from Ace Cap Inc., DBA Wines and More, 2421 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, for a change of managers.
And I would ask that Ms. Kutchell and Mr. Caprio be let into the meeting, please. I probably butchered your name. I'm sorry.
Is this a public hearing or if it's just a change of manager? That's not a public hearing,
Andrew
is it?
Manager.
You know what, it's, you know,
It's put as a public hearing.
Yeah, but I don't think it should be. I mean, we're not talking about a premises alteration or a new license. This is just ministerial.
I think he's right, because this has come up before, and
I think he's right too.
I think
However, we've got it on there for a hearing, so let's do it as a hearing.
okay, I moved. So,
Second,
A motion made to open the hearing and a second. Is there any further discussion? We will explore the propriety of doing this in the future. All those in favor of opening the hearing, Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Slavin,
Yes,
Mr. Tropiano? I didn't hear your words. And Mr. Titlebaum?
yes.
And myself, yes. So the hearing is now open. I will hear from, is it Miss, could you pronounce your name for me, Miss? You're muted. I'm sorry. There's no way I think I could pronounce your name. Knutchel? You're muted. You're still muted. Still muted.
Hello.
There you go.
There you
Sorry, my first time doing a Zoom. It's Knuckle.
Knuckle, okay. Good evening, Ms. Knuckle. Could you identify yourself and just explain what it is that you're looking to do?
So my name is Penny Ann Knuckle, and I was made the general manager of the Wines and More Wareham location. And I'm just asking that my name be put on the license for the store.
Thank you. Is Mr. Caprio here with you? No,
I don't think so. I think one of my other bosses is here, Scott Lannon,
do you want him to come to the meeting?
if he would like to.
Mm,
I have a Dorothy Lannon.
That
Yeah,
may
that's
be
probably how
him.
it shows up when they logged in.
Would you let Dorothy Lannon in then, please? I'm presuming that's. We can neither see you or hear you.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, and could you identify yourself, please, then?
Yes, I'm Scott Lannon. I am District Manager for Wines and More.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And you are supporting the change of manager?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
You're
Are there any questions by the board? I see none. Is there anyone here who chooses to speak on behalf of the applicant from the audience? And I see none. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against the change of manager? Please raise your hand. I see none of those. I will accept a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made to close the hearing, and with a second, I will go for a roll call vote, please. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Slavin. I didn't hear you, but I saw you move. Thank you. Mr. Tropiano.
I move that we. approve the-
I need a yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Mr. Titlebaum
Yes.
and myself, yes, the hearing is closed. Now I'll
I move-
accept a motion.
Approve the application of ACAP Inc., DBA Wines and More, 2421 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, for a change of manager to Penny Knuckle.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
and myself, yes, 500. Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you, for attending the meeting, and the paperwork will be set up for you in the next few days.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Next is
We're now going to have Mr. Buckland, I believe, is here.
Yeah.
discussion will vote to endorse the housing assessment and production plan for the town of Wareham.
Yep. Now, I have been asked because the, we're going to hear from Mr. Buckland this evening because he has a presentation and we have the information. However, it has come to my attention that we were given the information, or some of us were given the information kind of late. And because the presentation is over 72 pages long, I'd like to hear the presentation, but I'd like to hold the vote off until next week. We have until the 28th to be able to issue the letter. Is that correct, Mr. Buckland? You're muted, sir.
Got his license up there.
Okay, Mr. Buckland, we have until the 28th to get you the letter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if I put it on the agenda next week for a vote, it's on here now, but because my members did not have an opportunity to have more than a few hours looking at this document. So if you would do your presentation, we will be able to do some questioning, and I would ask that you come back next week. If there are any further questions, I will get that information from the board, and you might have to come back and just answer a few questions in order to get your endorsement.
That sounds very reasonable.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, let me share my screen. I have a few slides to show. Can you see that?
Yes.
Hmm?
All right. I just have a few slides to go through to help me organize my thoughts and hopefully get you in line with what the content of the assessment and production plan is all about. It's a 5-year plan. The last one that was approved was back in 2013. It has a snapshot of existing conditions. There are 20 different actions and strategies included in the report to produce housing affordable to residents of the state and the town. What it does is when we adopt it, it enables us to obtain priority for grants and technical services from the state And it also, through the implementation of it, protects us against unfriendly, which are most of the 40B applications that come before the town. So to give you some of that information that's included in there, back in 2010 was the last US Census that was included in the housing production plan that the town produced. We were growing pretty fast then. We're not growing as fast in the last decade as we were in the previous decade. And so the projections that came out of the UMass Donahue Institute were exceeded what we actually resulted in showing in the US Census for 2020. It was mentioned before, we are a community that is somewhat have the same kind of income as the rest of the county and the state. And we have a greater number of small house. Interestingly enough, the population growth was 6.8% in the last decade, but the number of households increased by 18.6%. So what's happening is that the households are getting smaller, and there are more of them coming in, so that there are people that are living alone and having to deal with on their in the smaller units of groups of people. In the age distribution of the population, this is the state. The dotted lines are the state percentages, and the blue is the blue, green, teal, whatever is the town percentage. And you'll see that the 55 to 84-year-old age group, we have more percentage of those age groups in our mix than the rest of the state has. So what we have is an older age groups are the higher percentage compared to the state. One of the things that we worry about with the lower incomes is people being burdened with the cost of renting. And there's 50% of the renters in the town suffer from having a severe or at least a cost burden that exceeds what they would hopefully have if they were had a better income to afford the rents associated with the units they're in. We have a market potential for, based on the work that FXM Associates did for us, that matches well with the income levels of the area median income that is considered low and very low income. So we have at $900 a month, that is equivalent to a cost associated with 30% of the area median income. That's a comparison of the income from to the individuals, to the household, versus what the average or the median income is for our particular region. One of the things that is an issue with the housing production plans and the affordable housing that we have to deal with is that the area that we're considered part of is the Boston metropolitan area. So the prices exceed what we would normally look at for saying it's affordable to local residents. But as you can see, the equivalence of the area median income matches with the actual market potential, so that we could actually produce units and have people fill them at those income levels. So the important findings from the housing assessment are that we have a higher percentage of elderly in the town. We have growth of smaller households that are going faster than the population growth. That there's a high percentage of renters that are burdened by the rents that they have to pay, and there's a vacancy rate that is low for rental. There's a scarcity, and the demand drives higher prices in the market, so it adds to the cost burden. But we have that. With that, we have a potential, and what we need are the options that are available to house people within this market in this region. So what we have, the next part of the production plan are the strategies, the actions that are proposed to address the housing production. We have the idea of picking the zoning district or a neighborhood for housing development that would fit the mold or the character of development that we look for within the town. We have a choice. We can start choosing specific sites, as we did with Littleton Drive and Swiss Beach, to create affordable housing. We promote mixed-use projects, such as the Tremont Nail Factory and downtown, to get the housing we need, as well as the commercial base for the purposes of tax growth. And lastly, that we participate in regional collaborations, that we don't take this, try to shoulder all of the demands for housing on the town itself, but look to other communities to help out and look at regional approaches to this as well. We talk about building capacity, and in that we look for additional professional support. This could be housing specialists that are paid for in a number of different ways to support the new programs that the state is putting out to develop housing, because the state is really putting a lot of pressure on communities to develop housing and affordable housing. Community education can be helpful in regard to how these projects can fit into the community, and what it means to our people to have better housing available to them. Getting some money to the Wareham Affordable Housing Trust. That's not what's spelled wrong. That's the Wareham Affordable Housing Trust. So that they can apply to funds to the development of housing by private developers or nonprofits and public agencies to create new types of units. That we identify town land that's suitable for development of affordable housing. We update our 40B procedures. We can create rules and regulations for 40B applications that come before us. We have some in place, but they have to be updated. One of the interesting aspects of the town is all the mobile homes we have, which are very affordable units. There may be a way to get these on the subsidized housing inventory list to, if there's a deed restriction and some kind of subsidy that is applied to the units, so that it fits the state program. Implement the LIP bylaw, the local initiative program bylaw that was passed by town meeting and is coming up again for revisions. Promote accessory units as a way to have diverse and scattered affordable housing units that count towards the subsidized housing inventory list. And to use the economic development strategy to develop mixed-use development in the town village centers, to develop affordable housing as part of that strategy. In terms of housing development, we're going to pick public lands for housing. build partnerships with housing developers and community development corporations, continue the housing rehab program, continue pursuit of housing funds, create a rental assistance program, develop an above the shop program, and add housing to downtown revitalization. You'll see some of these crossover. The next steps in this were I've advertised a public meeting for Thursday, March 24th at 5 p.m. room 27 of Town Hall. And after which, when we get the recommendations from the Board of Selectmen and your endorsement of it, we'll submit it to the State Department of Housing and Community Development. So that in a nutshell is the plan.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, do you have questions or comments, sir?
No, I think this unfortunately follows, and it's nothing to do with Ken. The last couple times we've done this over the years, it's really difficult for us to get going on it. As usual, it always has to do with money, has to do with us in the Boston rate. We've actually reached out down to Congressman Keating to get us into either the New Bedford or the Brockton area instead of Boston. HUD is the one who actually assigns this, which I didn't realize that they were involved with this. And we did contact them through Congressman Keating, and the comment was, well, maybe in 2 or 3 years we might consider it. They were definitely not very helpful. They do control it completely, so we'll keep after it. But that's one of the biggest problems we have, is where we're listed. And of course, we've been trying for years to get the mobile homes included in the affordable listing classification. And the constant piece they come back with is they don't have the income of the people living in the mobile or manufactured homes. And until they have that, the state's not willing to make any kind of adjustment for us. So I appreciate all the work. It's really difficult. And I'm looking forward to the end results of what we can do. The governor has put a real priority on housing. Unfortunately, he's up after this year. I don't know what the next governor will be like, but we need to take advantage of all these programs. And there's a lot of programs coming down for grants, et cetera. But it's a lot of work to do, and hopefully we'll be able to have enough assistance to make this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum?
No, I don't have any questions. I was on the Affordable Housing Trust when the 2013 plan was done, when the consultant was brought in. Went through that whole process. So I'm appreciative of Director Buckland and his staff for getting this thing updated.
Thank you. Mr. Manise?
I just want to thank Director Buckland and everybody who contributed to this, and a lot of work. It's a moving target. You wait too long, the numbers change, and you have to realign. So good job, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Tropiano?
Yeah, I think, this is something that hopefully will help a bit. Although I don't have a lot of optimism for it, because I think that the state will just move the numbers and move the posts, no matter what we do, and no matter how much we try to get a handle on this. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, the last time we 2 times ago, when we asked them to include the homes, the mobile homes, one of the things that was sad was they allowed Boston to use theirs, but they didn't allow ours. And
Really,
it's the real estate lobby that killed us.
Right.
They dead set against this for some reason, and nobody can tell me why. But anything that can help, even a little bit, is better than nothing.
Thank you. I just want to thank Mr. Buckland for putting together, and probably your office staff as well, a very, very thorough document. It took me, and I read pretty well, pretty quickly. It took me a couple of hours to actually go through the entire document, and I made some suggestions to you, as you know.
Thank you. I
So,
appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think those suggestions are important for the state to realize that we've been trying to do what Mr. Slavin referred to, that we actually had 2 town meetings that voted to ask the legislature to approve mobile homes as affordable housing. At any rate, we will ask you to come back next week so that we can ask any other questions that the gentleman may have after they've had an opportunity to read the document. So I would ask that you would be available next week as well. We'll put you on first. And then we will take a vote, and the next day you could have a letter of endorsement, presuming that the gentleman and I will go along with it, if that's okay with you.
That sounds fine. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay.
One thing
Mr.
I wanted to add to this as well, though, is that we've received money for the Littleton Housing Project from the state, substantial amount of money without the housing production plan being in place. So if we have the right project, we're going to get support from the state.
Excellent. Mr. Sullivan, any questions or comments, sir?
And if we were ever to go for safe harbor or anything, we need to have a housing production plan in place.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. So this is it's a key element for many issues. You know, I like some of the suggestions in there. I'd be interested in seeing how we can get. One of the things is all the staffing is so spread out on current projects and just the day-to-day activities that things like this can be difficult. I appreciate all the extra work, and then I do agree maybe looking into seeing how we can either get some staffing or consultants helping with some of these plans. It would be you know, enacting some of these would be excellent.
Thank you. Seeing no other waving hands or anything like that, I'll have you say good night, Mr. Buckland, and thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Welcome.
Next is discussion and possible vote to establish a golf course advisory committee.
Okay, I had given you some information 3 weeks ago, maybe, I'm not sure, about a golf course committee. Mr. Manise forwarded something to us last week, I believe. So we've kicked around that we think it might be a good idea, but we really haven't come down to what is a good idea about it and why would we have it. So, Mr. Slavin?
Basically, I think we should keep this fairly simple, set up one committee to get this done. I can come back in a few minutes. I have to bring up the notes that I have, but why don't you go on, someone else, then I'll continue.
Okay, Mr. Titlebaum?
Yeah, I read both what Selectman Manise had proposed and also what you had proposed. I don't know that we even need to formalize it that much. I mean, and this is an advisory committee, and the whole notion of an advisory committee is to be there to respond to questions, to give, you know, feedback, guidance, to roll ideas off of. And I just don't think you need to formalize the process with that. If the advisory committee, you know, part of what they do is, you know, take a look at, you know, what sort of agreement you would enter into with the golf management company. I suppose you might want to mention that as part of their charge. But I don't think you need to formalize the lines of communication here, because I think you may run afoul of some of the charter provisions that give the town administrators, you know, certainly the rights as the procurement officer and so on and so forth. So I think you just kind of, you create it, you put people on that you think would be knowledgeable both about the, you know, the game of golf and also, you know, possible, you know, course administration, business administration, and just kind of let it flow from there.
Okay, Mr. Manise?
That's basically what I was suggesting with the first committee, the steering group, is take people who have experience in the area, understand the workings of municipal government, and be able to fast track this and get it done in a quick format. And I also changed it so that if you did want to formalize it, that the formal committee would just make recommendations to the town administrator. And he and his responsibilities as provided by charter and otherwise would be the person making decisions and allocations and recommendations after hearing from the group. So my idea was just, like I said, individuals who are experienced in golf, who happen to be on committees for the town, and others to get this thing done in a quick and efficient manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, you all set or not?
Not yet, sorry.
Okay. To Mr. Maniz's suggestion, a member of the Finance Committee cannot serve on this. No member of the Finance Committee can serve on any of the standing committee, but
Unless they're appointed there, so, right?
can't do it.
I think that if it's a legislative committee, they can, because that's how the finance committee has a member on capital planning.
Right, but that's
Later.
not what we're talking about. We're talking
No,
really about.
I'm just trying to clear
Yeah.
up the little
Okay.
confusion there.
Can I
Yes,
I-
I'm sorry, Mr. Tropiano, go ahead.
like to weigh in? Okay, so, all right, so what I don't want to see happen here is I'm a little nervous about a committee getting established that goes beyond picking someone to operate the golf course, because I think that it's going to be very difficult to get somebody to come here and have some committee looking over their shoulder all the time, and I don't want to see that happen. I don't mind working with the town administrator if he wants, and putting a committee together that helps him to come up with whatever. But in my opinion, in the charter, this is his realm. That property, once it's bought and turned, that's in his control, not our control. We're technically out of it. But in order to get some help to him, and he's asking for this, and if he is, that's fine, and he can answer if he wants. To help have some people that are in the industry to help get somebody in place. Once they're in place, we had a project once upon a time out at Westfield to build some senior housing. And I remember they put so much stuff in there, and there was so much, frankly, bull crap in it that they couldn't get a single person to bid on it.
Right.
And that's concerned about. And I don't want to see that happen, because I know there's a lot of companies out there, but they don't want some committee from some town looking over them who doesn't know jack about jack, frankly, telling them what to do, and going run to the town administrator about this, that, and the other thing. Derek's done a pretty damn good job taking care of properties and running and doing his job, in my opinion. And I think this is just another one that he takes care of. He handles it. He's going to have to worry about the money coming in, and all that stuff. That's his job. And I just don't want to see that happen. And I hope that we won't go there to have some committee after the individual or the group that is chosen to operate the golf course. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Solomon, do you want to weigh in? Or Mr. Slavin, do you want to weigh in now?
Yeah, I'm awake now.
I
There we
didn't
go.
ask you if you were awake.
Well, this day is always interesting anyways. The issue I think we have overall is that I remember I helped formulate the audit committee. And of course, when people think audit committee, that means we're supposed to tell Mr. Sullivan and the auditors, what to do and how to do, et cetera. All our job was really is to sit there and take a look at the audit, see what the results are. And if anything seems there, we could make a comment to Mr. Sullivan. We never contacted the auditors and asked them for anything unless there was a question. Even that went through Mr. Sullivan also. It just doesn't work any other way. My only concern is that Derek has so much on his plate that the 9 to 7 or 9 to 6 timeframe doesn't work anymore in these type of jobs as a town administrator. It's virtually a 24-hour job, unfortunately. If we put together any kind of committee, it should be strictly a group that should basically have suggestions from Mr. Sullivan if there's anything coming up to help him out, just to give him some basis of something that might be going off that it's not normal. I wouldn't put anything together any more than that because I think I've used the word FUBAR before, which we all know what it means. And I think you end up really messing things up. You have a management company where their job is to make money, or else they won't be here. And Mr. Sullivan's in charge of the property. And I originally looked at gyms and I started to say, okay, we can do this, we can't do the finance committee piece. And then I realized that we're just putting a layer in there that we really don't need. I have full faith in Mr. Sullivan. My only concern is how much time during the day he has to do everything else that he has to do. And I'm comfortable with basically, if you really want to put a committee together, you know, it has to be an advisory committee, and it doesn't have direct access to, you know, sitting there and telling the management company anything at all. It has to come through Mr. Sullivan. And that's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan? You choose to comment on it?
Yeah, I don't see, clearly I appreciate the ideas. I think I'm the biggest defender of the charter powers of the position I'm in. Probably to the point I get cranky sometimes about it, but that's that's what it is. I don't see this as an evasion. I think it's a help on the matter. The RFP's already been developed, was posted today. It's up on Combis, it's on the town website. It'll be in the newspaper, so that's already gone out. Well, they would help obviously with going through the responses we have, and I think it could be helpful. And if it's not working, I believe I'll be the first one to pull the plug on it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I think my suggestion, which was really my idea was not to have any teeth to the committee, but it's we'll call it the jelly between the two slices of bread. Mr. Sullivan is clearly in charge of the property, and clearly the management company is in charge of the day-to-day affairs on the course. However, I'm not sure that Mr. Sullivan ever played something less than 100 on a round. And he's had an enormous amount of help in terms of putting together the RFP and in terms of understanding what it would take to run a course for a municipality. I think he would be the first to admit a large amount of information given to him in conversations, not telling him anything, but in educating him on the process and helping him understand the different kinds of models for management companies and how they are picked and how they help the town. The couple of towns that I know of that use golf course committees, one is in Falmouth and one is in Holliston. They both are town-owned properties, and they really are. They're the peanut butter in the sandwich, and they don't run the course and they don't run the town administrator, but they bring to information to the town administrator that he may or may not be aware of from time to time in an advisory capacity only. And that's really what I'm looking to do, is to unburden Mr. Sullivan from the extraordinary amount of work that gets done by him and his team.
Well, I've golfed less times than I've been in car accidents, so I don't know what that tells you.
I don't know how many car accidents you've been in. I don't think I want to know. So, gentlemen, what is your, oh, okay. What is your feeling?
Well, I made it pretty clear that I think we should have some kind of advisory committee if that's the way the board wants to go, and use the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid.
I agree. I would say no more than 5, and maybe only, well, it would need to be an odd number, and it's really an advisory committee, and it would be appointed by this board of people who want to be helpful to make sure that the course succeeds as a municipal course. That's really, I think, what I'm looking for.
So it would be a 3-year term then, and the usual with 5, it'd be 2, 2, and 1, how it rotates. If you want to do that. I know
I wouldn't
Patrick,
even formalize it that
I
much.
wouldn't even formalize it that way. I would just say it's an advisory committee that maybe
You-
sunsets itself after a couple of years.
So
I
you
would
just-
like to sunset after the management company has been picked.
I'm
you
sorry.
wanna-
I want to see it sunset after a management company takes over the property. You know, you can give it a few months until it's up and running, but after they take it over, done. So they should sunset.
First, how about through December 31st, which is the first term for the management company contract?
That would be fine, but
Okay.
nothing.
Okay.
I don't
Is
want,
that-
you know, I've seen too many of these things, condo associations and
I
things
know,
running to, you know, it becomes a nightmare.
right. And I agree with you. I don't think we want to snarl snarl it up. So what if it's an advisory committee of 5?
Five
And
is,
it's,
5 is good. You get 5 people that know what the hell's going on. You put them on
That's
there.
right.
okay, and you sunset it at December 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Um,
Yeah, that,
Okay,
okay, so now we can discuss it. So that's basically what I'm suggesting as the first part. As a steering committee is just people that know what they're doing, get it moving, oversee it a little bit, have some conversation. And,
Yes.
and then that goes away. If no one's really interested in the full committee, it wasn't my recommendation, but I just saw a different process and how it would operate, then I'm good with it. I'm good with the motion as made.
okay, great, thank you. I have a
Great.
motion and a second to create a 5-member committee advisory group that sunsets on December 31st, 2022. Its purpose is to advise but not meddle. Does that summarize your motion?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, I will do a roll call vote, please. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
yes,
Ms. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Slavin,
Yes,
and myself, yes. I will post it on the town's website tomorrow. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Next, Mr. Tropiano.
okay. Next up, we have a discussion. Well, let's do this one here. Discussion about establishing a renewable energy committee.
This came up as a suggestion from the solar bylaw study committee. I don't remember their correct name. As they were doing their homework and all of their information gathering, it became clear that alternative energy is going to be as important as that there are many forms of alternative energy. So it actually was a recommendation forwarded to me by members of that solar bylaw committee. I think it's a good idea because in California, they're paying $7.39 for a gallon of gas today. So we are really behind the 8 ball in terms of we haven't been proactive in protecting the climate. We have not been proactive in understanding that we really are going to run out of petroleum products. That's my opinion. So
I don't understand that how that equates to what we do as a community. Are you saying a renewable energies to what would they do? I mean, we were on the forefront of going with the solar credits from the town. We were one of the first ones. We were having the charging station, one of the first ones. We're going with electric vehicles. I'm sorry, I don't understand that statement that we are, if you're talking as a nation maybe, but saying us as a town, I have to take a little bit of umbrage on that one.
you know, as a nation, I'm not saying as a town. As a nation, I think we are pretty dumb. The town has not been, I agree with you. Mr. Slavin, you probably have some input from the state side, am I correct?
yeah, well, the state, as you know, is looking at the solar, particularly the wind turbine stuff, is kind of pushed off to the side because of all the different reasons not to do it. You just have to look to Falmouth. They had two fairly good installations which got shut down, and it cost Falmouth quite a bit of money for that one. The state, as long as we have the current administration in place, is pushing extremely hard. They've committed to a tremendous amount of megawatts. As you know, the offshore power there's two projects approved now coming down the line. I think one's coming into Falmouth, another one is coming into, I think it's, could be, it's not Swansea, but I think it's Somerset, where the two towers where the coal burning plants. So that's all coming through to the area and stuff. And basically, there's a fallacy, which I hope people really look at. There was a thing called peak oil, which talked about this coming and how we can't depend ourselves on oil. But at the same time, if you look at all the reserves in the United States, it's actually there, and the oil that's here, it costs a little more to get out of the ground. We have more oil than anybody else actually available if they want to produce it and take it out of here. I believe we have enough to last us 100 years, actually. So there's a lot of stuff going around that's misleading of what's happening. Having a renewable energy committee, I'm not sure how that works, because basically, you could have your planning board, which could have a subcommittee to do that job anyways, because renewable energy is going to come through them anyways. I think people get upset because they look at the schools, they look at town buildings, and they don't see any solar, panels up there. The problem is, and I guess I'll take responsibility. Back some years ago, when these projects first started to come up about building, we bought 6 megawatts of power in a project in Plymouth. We passed on the one with the wind towers, which is on Route 25, with the man family. We went ahead and bought 6 with the understanding that we were using 8. Turns out we were using just barely 6. So we've been unable to really do a lot of things. We could sit there and lease, properties that we own and get money that way. And the Water Pollution Control Facility badly wanted to put a facility on their area. But the problem would be if they did it and use the power, we'd end up with these credits that we couldn't use that we pay for. So a lot of people have to realize that we put ourselves in an advanced position that worked out great and has all along. I think we negotiated 20 and then a 25%, discount on the solar credits. But we're kind of locked into where we are. And I think the only thing we can do as a town is, for our own properties, is if they want to lease property out and get income from it, but not the actual energy itself. So, and as far as individuals go, if there's a way for the state to make it easy for people to put solar on their houses or on their property, fine and dandy. It's not going to affect us at all. But it's not that we're ignoring the system. We basically bought into the system as the state presented it to us. And unfortunately, as we get more efficient constantly, we get closer and closer to that 6 megawatt usage. And once we get below that, it will cost us extra money. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manise?
Renewable Energy Committee. I understand what previous speakers said about the planning board, but truthfully, they're stretched pretty thin with the projects that they have, and for them to devote any specific time to developing possible bylaws or recommendations for it, it's difficult. A lot of what gets done comes from Ken's office after recommendations. And this committee could work on something like that. I don't see it as a necessity to be a permanent committee, but to look at, things like, battery storage and what are safe limits and generation facilities, and it wouldn't be a bad idea overall. And if we have people willing to step up and do that, especially some of the members that have already been doing it, because it was like a yeoman's chore and a huge learning curve with all the information they had to go through just to get through the solar bylaws. It would probably be helpful, and then make recommendations or report out to the planning board for, possible inclusion in bylaws, the zoning bylaws. I think would be helpful in that sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Titlebaum?
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you, this whole issue has just taken on a life of its own. And to the extent that anything we do that's viewed as overly restrictive is just gonna get canned by the state. Any attempts to try to block things that are allowed under existing law at the state level, the state is fully committed to this, as Alan says. You're not going to stop them. And for myself, I think there's a huge waste of time and energy on this sort of singular issue that the state's going to decide for us anyway. So I don't know why we're investing so much time in it, and that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Tropiano?
All right, so this is a strange thing that's going on here. Okay, so it's going to take some time for us to convert into renewables. It's just as simple as that. The time, this 2030 whatever is absurd. It's never going to happen. It's pie in the sky. We're never going to get there. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't get there. We shouldn't start to move towards it. We got to start thinking about things like that. I don't know that a committee can help on a town level, because I think the state needs to enact stuff like in the stretch code, they need to put in that, new houses will have solar panels on the roof as a requirement. They need to decide, who's going to be able to put solar here, there, and everywhere. And, really start to push the issue. But it becomes like a political football. I mean, just think about how it is right now, okay? Like we're not pumping any gas out of the ground or any fuel out of the ground right now because for whatever reason they don't want to. But it's okay if we buy it from other countries or from other places. Now, how does that help climate change if they take it out somewhere else? What's the difference? We might as well take it out here. You know what I mean? It's just a political baloney. I don't know if you know this, but in 2008, they switched diesel vehicles over to, they had to meet a certain standard of exhaust coming out the pipe, okay? Now, when they did that, they were not ready. So they asked at the time, I think it was the Obama administration, to extend it because they weren't ready. And they said, nope, we're not giving you an extension. We already gave you a couple. We're not giving you any more. So they said, okay, we'll put these filters in, right? We'll put these filters in here and the filters will handle it. Well, they took those vehicles and what they did is they reduced, by putting the filters in, they created back pressure and they reduced, okay, think about this. They reduced the amount of mileage by 25%, okay? Now, when they put the probe at the tailgate, at the tailpipe, they got the number that they needed to get out the back. But it took them 25% more to go the same distance. And the vehicles that instead of those engines going 500,000 miles, they only go about 100,000 miles and they're junk. So you see, they fooled themselves. It's all fake. It's all make believe. This is the problem, is they're using this as a political football. It's like a game between, we're pushing this, we're pushing that, we're doing whatever. But it's a game. Nobody's serious. And until they get serious and stop playing politics with this, it's just not going to happen. We'll never. 2035 is ridiculous. I talked to a guy from Eversource, one of the guys that would know, and he says he doesn't think the grid would be ready to handle all that electricity until somewhere near the turn of the century. Now that means they got to dump a lot more money into it to try to get that to happen. But nobody's serious. They just aren't. So I'm not so sure that a committee like this can help on the town level, is what I'm saying. I think this is really above us. This is not on our pay grade. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying.
Okay, great. So I don't hear a whole lot of enthusiasm.
Madam Chair, if I can, we
Sure.
are a green community. We adopted it through town meeting. We work with Serped on those, on tracking, going through everything.
Mhm.
We have to buy specific vehicles. We can get fined for that. Some of the concerns that I have are more of an emergency management level as Eversource is sort of reducing their electric production, which we have seen. It's something that's been coming through the emergency management realm. You start seeing the potential for the rolling brownouts, especially in the winter. Summer, when we've got sort of one of the heightened usage. One of my main concerns is and people are right in a way, we aren't benefiting from some of these solar facilities in this town because, we're getting the revenues, et cetera, but we're not capturing that through battery storage for the efficiencies. That means when you have rolling brownouts or other such items, you're not keeping that within our community. The concerns about that you have from some of the fire departments, I think that's been being addressed. Those are the types of things we need to look into. I mean, the battery storage facility you saw in Provincetown is actually a really great project and helps them retain power into the Cape, which had such issues beforehand, and especially when they're trying to get the wind power going in there. So those are some of the items. And I mean, some of those battery storage facilities on a small size can be a 9-figure project on the valuations. I'm talking $100 million project. They're substantial. So it's, those are the types of things I think looking into. I'm trying to figure out, I was looking at what the green communities had for what energy committees are. I looked at some of the other towns. Some of the other towns, as soon as they became green communities, sort of dropped off. That was their goal. But there's obviously some active ones and some others. I just think I'd like to know what's the purpose or the goal outside of just saying we have one.
Madam Chair, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
Quick? One thing. Okay, so I just want to know that I just want to be clear that I believe, us as a community have worked tirelessly to try to get on board to everything that we could. I mean, we put together plans. Like he says, we've done all this kind of thing, and I think that's great. I mean, it's terrific, and we're kind of going in that thing, but we're kind of stagnated by the state not giving us a clear path. You know what I'm saying? And that's really, like I said, I think it's above our pay grade. But Mr. Sullivan's absolutely right. We've done a lot to try to stay as a green community, do those kinds of things. And just so you know, I wasn't really in favor of this whole stretch code thing because I know they're going to add more and more to it. But to be honest with you, there's a lot of things they could have done in the stretch code that they haven't done.
Okay. All right. Well, I see no real excitement for the idea, so we will just pass it over at the moment.
All right.
Thank you.
Discussion, let's see, discussion and possible vote to approve the opt-out fee application for curbside billing FY22 in the amount of $273.75. And then it's interesting because the next one is discussed.
No. That's 200.
The same amount.
No, one is 73 and the other 75. So E is the 273.73.
Yeah,
And that's the opt-out.
So, and then there's 2 cents to put back in.
There was an error on the other one, so we need to do them separately.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just noticed that it was cents difference.
Yeah, it's 2 cents different, and I was confused about it too. But when I researched it, I realized that we had to do them separately, and the first one would be the opt-out reduction fee.
Okay, so I move we approve the 273.73 FY22 curbside billing. What is it? What do we call this now? We're not calling it opt-out fee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Slavin. Yes, and myself, yes, 500. Thank you. And the next one?
And I move we rescind the abatement in the amount of $273.75 due to stake and an abatement.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to the rescind an abatement previously made in error. Any further discussion on that motion? I will go for a roll call vote, please. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes,
Mr. Slavin. Yes, and myself, yes.
okay, we gotta
Excellent.
go along, so I'm gonna kind of read these a little fast, okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Request from Wareham Garden Club to place signs on town property. We approve that. They do it all the time. It's pretty good. I don't see an issue. So I move that we,
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve as they were submitted in writing.
so,
Any further discussion on the motion? I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
yes,
Mr. Slavin,
Yes,
myself, yes. Thank you.
that we ratify the hiring of Devin Clouder, control officer.
Cloutier.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Is there a
it's
second? Motion made and seconded to ratify the hiring of an animal control officer. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Slavin,
yes,
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes,
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
myself, yes, 500. Thank you.
discussion and vote to recommend articles for the 2022 annual Springtown meeting.
I'd like to have you make a motion only for we got the figure for the Upper Cape.
Okay,
I
Move
wrote it
to
down,
recommend.
yeah, second.
and that's article number 9.
One of those ones we can't do anything about anyway.
Right.
What is it? 900 and something thousand
3 million,
dollars?
3 million something or other. I wrote it down on a piece of paper that I can't find right now, but it was 3 million and change. A motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
are they gonna come and do a presentation ahead of time? For the public?
They're doing a presentation to the FinCom. We don't usually have them come to us, but we can ask them to next week.
It's up to you. It's just many times they come and do the presentation to the board.
Yeah,
as
I can
well.
ask them for next week if you'd like. Do you want to hold off on it until then or not?
No, we can approve it, but if they come, that way the public gets to hear what's actually going on.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve. I will go for a roll call vote, please. Mr. Manise.
I just want to preface this and say, I really like to get figures when we're recommending, and as previous speaker said, we don't have a lot of choice on this, but it's nice to put that in there, but a reluctant yes,
Thank you.
just on process.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Titlebaum.
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes,
myself, Mr. Slavin,
Yes,
myself, yes, it's 500 for Article 9 only.
okay, that's it.
Yeah,
Any other town business not reasonably anticipated the last 48 hours? Anybody? Nope. Okay, town administrators report, please.
Mr. Chairman, I've obviously, Mr. Clark, I've obviously said a lot tonight. I do want to give you some good information. I appreciate Mr. McDonald. He's delivered 600 of the COVID tests to the COA, and hopefully Missy will start handing those out, including the Meals on Wheels. We think that'd be good to have. We're in our lull again, but no, never hurts. Interestingly enough, as soon as I started taking off the mask and the kids were unmasked in school, I got my first real cold in the last 2 years. So,
Cold.
so they brought something home. So thank you.
you're welcome. I do have the figure. I found it. It's $3,209,689 for the Upper Cape Regional.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Liaison reports.
Mr. Slavin.
Okay. Metropolitan Planning Organization for Serpent, which goes over all the local and state combination road projects. Our bike path is still on for 2024, 2025. I think it's up to like $6 million now. And that's only the Narrows Road and the Minot Ave project. I've been trying to see if they would consider a roundabout rotary at the end of Minot Ave where Depot Street comes in and Great Neck and Onset Ave. I'll let you know if I get any traction with that one. The bridge project, as everybody knows, with Lubianic is scheduled to go in. There's another project that the state is going to do, which goes from basically the Swiss Beach Road all the way down to the actual bridge itself, which would have a bike path lane on one side, at least possibly both. I'm not sure if they're going to go ahead and redo the road over at that time because there's been no formal decision on whether they're going to go and stay with 4 lanes on Route 6 or whether they're going to go to the 2 lane plus the 3rd turning lane. And like I say, the Swiss Beach light is approved, and the reconstruction of that whole intersection with crosswalks, etc., is in place. Just to give you an idea how bad it is, construction costs these days. When we get a quote, if we don't do the quote that day and actually start, the bridge on the Weelianic is $42 million for that project. The number is unbelievable. You would think maybe 10, 15 million would, even that would be a lot of money. It's $42 million. And that's as of this past week. If they didn't start it for another year, God knows what it would be. The planning board met last night, and we have coming forward a crumpet factory out of New Bedford that's moving to Wareham. It's owned by the company that actually owns the Buzz's Way Garage. They're moving their whole operation from New Bedford to Wareham. And it's a nice, strong project, and the presentation was well done. I expect to see that get approved in the next meeting or two as well. And we're having some issues on the planning board with Bay Point as far as the getting information and the meetings itself, but there's also, unfortunately, a lot of complaints. So the planning board has some work to do as far as Bay Point and stuff. I won't get into it at all this time, but it's, you know, it's just what's coming up. But one comment that the planning board doesn't have enough time, I'm not picking on them at all. The bottom line is that they're volunteers, so they only have limited time available. But we used to, at one point, the planning board would set up subcommittees of 1 or 2 people and go off and do side projects like the sign bylaw and the transfer of development rights that we did as well during that time frame. So it can be done. I think the biggest thing for the planning board, and it's not their fault, is they don't get the information well enough in advance from the applicants coming in a lot of times. And they'll come into a meeting and the information will be there as they come into the meeting. I know for us as a board, I would never vote for something if I get it 2 hours before a meeting, because I have no idea what I'm looking for. So there's got to be some way to help the planning board out to get their information earlier. Maybe a process that they don't put it on their agenda until they've had it for a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. But either way, it's becoming a real problem, and I'd like to see it solved somewhere down the line. And that's it for this week. I've been a little under the weather.
Thank you. Mr. Manise? Liaisons?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of Alan on the planning board. It's not easy, and there's always rules that you have to follow and timelines and dates. So I think they do a good job, and I understand their frustration, and they're stepping up to try to address some of the issues that they're suffering from. They're being created by, you know, short notice on changes and not getting information in a timely fashion. It shows up the day of the hearing, and expectation of being recognized, the proponent being recognized in discussing that when they haven't had an opportunity to review it. So they're handling it, and I gotta have to give them a lot of credit on that. Let's see, there's a recycling committee meeting tomorrow, and it's just like Wednesdays are just so busy meeting wise. So any new committees, don't pick Wednesday, please. Also, FinCom and Thankfully, Mr. Pigeon, I believe, took me off for tomorrow night on the Affordable Housing Trust warrant article, and the next week, and then 7 o'clock, the steering committee for the DECAS. So busy, and if I may, if you could indulge me for 1 second, I missed something on announcements. There's going to be a 50 sock hop dance benefiting the Wareham Council on Aging on April 8th, 5 to 10, Salerno's. Price would be $15. All goes, 100% goes to the COA, and they'll have some prizes, 50-50 raffle, music by Daddio, pasta and stationary hors d'oeuvres. For more information and ticket sales, contact 508-273-6104. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks. Mr. Titlebaum? Liaison?
All set.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tropiano, liaison?
I don't really have much for liaison. I just want to remind people before we, because this is almost the end, that we be careful with your gas, because they are drilling holes in the tanks, taking the gas out. Relatively, believe it or not, this is going on. And the other thing that they drive over and they park their cars over the fuel tanks, and they pump it out of the ground and into these big containers in the back of a van or something like that. So gas is getting to be, no, it's going on all across the country. And, so be very careful. And I'm telling you, they don't siphon it out of your car. They just drill a hole into your tank and let it run out into a thing and take it. Do it in your driveway at night or anything like that. So, those people that have put their cars in front of their cameras or something, because you're gonna try to keep. It's like anything else, is a price issue or whatever. There's always an opportunity for people that are, just not the same as the regular people. They've got things they want to steal and whatever, and they do it. I don't even know what you do with it once you get it. I mean, do you sell it for less money to somebody? I don't know what they do with it, but whatever. I just want to tell you, be careful, be very careful.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I'll put my car in front of the dog. She can take care of security issues.
Yeah. Next week's agenda, we will be hearing from some of the articles. We will have Mr. Gibberti and Mr. Campina in on the sewer issues, as well as some updates about what is coming out of the sewer department. On the 29th, we will be hearing from the petitioners' articles, the lead petitioner on the submitted articles for the special. And that's all I have to say. Oh, and we also discovered a set of executive session minutes from 2011. You will be asked to approve them next week. Please don't yell at me. We found them in a file. They need to be approved. They need to be processed. So we're catching up on things that haven't always been done in a timely fashion. Anyway,
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. So, by the way, you can do that out of necessity. You don't have to.
Yes.
Okay. I want to approve the October 22, 2019 and the June 15, 2020 executive session minutes, and hold because Mr. Bowen hasn't released them yet.
We have a motion made to approve and hold two sets of minutes. Is there any further discussion? I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Manise?
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano?
Yes.
Titlebaum?
Yes.
Slavin?
Yes.
And myself, yes, 500, approve and hold.
Okay. Next, we're going to go into executive session. We won't be coming back into regular session. And I move that we now leave and go to executive session for the purposes of, let's see, what do we got here? MGL 30A, section 21. Let's see, Sandy Slavin, chairperson, versus, what is it? RELLC? What is that? What's the BRE LLC?
BERE LLC, it's Borrego, basically.
It's separated, okay.
Yeah.
Discuss strategy with respects to collective bargaining or litigation So that's what, number 2, right? And then
That's
Yeah,
number
he-
3.
3, okay. And
Yeah.
then the West School to consider the purchase, exchange, lease as the chose chair declares. And again, collective bargaining or litigation. So it's the same one. So I move that we go into executive session.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to go into executive session, seconded by Mr. Titlebaum. Any further discussion? We will be taking a 5-minute recess and then coming back into executive session. And so that WCTV has the opportunity to clear the audience out, and it will only be the 5 of us and the 2 gentlemen that we employ. Motion made to go into executive session for reasons 3 and 6. Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano, Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
and myself, yes, 500. We will be taking a 5-minute recess. Mr. White, 5 minutes, so we will come back at 9:01, please. And we will not be coming back into open session subsequent to this.
Night all.
So, gentlemen, have a 5-minute recess.